I'm just going to start a little bit about killer partnerships. I mentioned this earlier. Partnerships are essential to, and this, by the way, this is only my opinion, of course, but I think they are essential to growth in digital health. And I also think that, I'm so sorry, guys. Shh, 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 shh. I haven't pulled out my shh yet. Shh, 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 shh. It works brilliantly at CES, by the way. Shh, shh, shh. Oh, thank you so much. So I think they're essential, and I think they're essential for so many different reasons. It could be for, a part that you just don't want to care to develop, or software you don't care to develop, or things that just will grow your business 100-fold, 10-fold. And in this next case, incredible technology that will be shared to change. I think my mouth was somewhat agape on the phone call. So it will change many people's lives. So I'm going to just start by introducing the moderator. And it was really nice this year to make a connection with Lee Simmons, writer and editor at Wired Magazine. And just a little fun fact about him. Lee began his career as a dolphin wrangler in Hawaii. He worked at Sea Life Park, where he was the guy who got in the water with the dolphins and whales during the shows, fed the sharks, stuff like that. Not scared of anything, right? Basically spent his days in wet shorts. From there, it was an obvious next step to pursue a PhD in economics. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm trying to remember why I stopped doing that. I'm delighted to be here today with Jeff Margolis, Chairman and CEO of Welltok, and Lori Saft, Director of Watson Ecosystems for IBM. For me, one of the most powerful ideas emerging from the digital health revolution is the idea of health optimization. Now, it sounds pretty simple and obvious on the surface. I mean, we all want to be as healthy as we can, right? Given our history and our individual circumstances. But the thing is, that's not really the way our current health system works. I'd like to share with you a personal anecdote that may sound familiar to some other people. 2 years ago, I went in for a physical exam and was stunned to have my doctor tell me that I was borderline pre-diabetic. Now, I wasn't really sick, so there wasn't anything he was proposing to do about it. There wasn't any follow-up. There wasn't any treatment plan. I basically walked out of there without any clue of what I was supposed to do next. I had a vague idea that I should live more healthfully, but no real idea what that might entail. And frankly, I was on my own with no one to check up on me, good intentions and a busy life. Sound familiar? I love my doctor. I think he's one of the best GPs in the nation. But he works within a system. And as far as the system is concerned, I wasn't a patient. The message was basically, come back and see us when you're diabetic. So I was really excited to hear about what Welltok is doing. Welltok has created a software platform called Cafe Well that helps people like me and you take charge of our own health. It provides the kind of follow-up that doctors are no longer able to give, and it creates incentives for people like me to take action and to follow through. Now, talk about killer partnerships. You take that powerful software platform and you add to it the cognitive computing abilities of IBM Watson. Everybody knows Watson, right? The supercomputer that beat the champs on Jeopardy. That was a big deal because Watson had to answer questions in English, not in some pre-cooked computer language. It means that we can talk to our computers for the first time, as you might talk to a health coach. A really, 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 really smart health coach. and that product is Cafe Well Concierge. So, Lori, I thought maybe you could get us started by telling a little bit more about what cognitive computing is and why IBM wants to bring Watson to healthcare.
Yeah, thanks, Lee. Everybody hear me okay? So if you saw Jeopardy, you got a good taste of what Watson did on a game show, which was, really about answering questions and making its way through lots and lots of information to come up with those answers. And we took that and looked at how we could apply that to some really tough problems in the world, and first tackled oncology. Frankly, we went to some of the biggest healthcare systems, and we worked side by side with some of these doctors to figure out if Watson could be applied to some of the hardest problems, related to healthcare and treatment options and patient care overall. So it was with that over the last couple of years then that we saw that core platform could actually be used in many, many different ways. And if we just offered up that API to innovative companies like what Jeff has with Welltok and other companies in retail and travel and transportation and finance, there were ways in which this brain, right, this new species of computing could actually be applied in all of our lives on a day-to-day basis. So that's exactly what we've done here with the partnership with Welltok, and Jeff will talk a little bit more about how that application is used and how it'll affect our lives.
Well, Jeff, maybe you could walk us through a scenario. How would someone actually use Cafe Well Concierge in practice?
Sure. Well, I was sorry to hear about your story of being told by your doctor that, hey, Lee, you're pre-diabetic. Have a nice day.
Right, exactly.
And so that's exactly the point of the platform, which is that we're operating in a sick care system, right? We're operating in a system where we have codes for diagnoses and codes for procedures, and they're all designed to create reimbursements, and most of the innovations that we're seeing in the industry are driven at getting at those sorts of things. But the fact is that most of us, 85% of the population at any point in time is in what we would call consumer state, not patient state. So in your case, here's how Cafe Well Concierge would work. Lee, where's your hometown?
I live here in the Bay Area.
Okay, so let's say you fly to Chicago, and you're not really familiar with Chicago. And so here's how Cafe Well Concierge works for you, because you've already logged into Cafe Well Concierge, and it knows a few things about you, because it understands a bit about your personal health goals. And by the way, you're anonymous. You have an anonymous username, and yet you're still sponsored by your health plan, and they're paying for you to be your healthiest you. So let's call you San Francisco Reporter is your username. And so you land at O'Hare, and because you were a good guy, unlike me, and you actually put your phone into airplane mode, once you take it off, it says, hey, San Francisco Reporter, welcome to Chicago. Hey, we noticed it's about dinner time in about an hour and a half. And because Watson is temporal, it understands time, and it can calibrate the way it thinks to time. And it says, and by the way, I took a look at your calendar, and I see that you're staying at this hotel. And so we know that your health goals are now about watching your weight and controlling your net carbohydrate intake. So here's a list of restaurants that are around your hotel. And here's some menu items off of that restaurant. And here's the points that you'll earn towards your health optimization status that you can apply to things like premium reduction, copay reduction, co-insurance reduction. And it becomes essentially the health concierge in your pocket that's with you all the time. It adjusts with you. It moves with you. And like Lori said, the reason it can do that, for those of you who are computer scientists in the room, if you had a program, algorithmic if-then logic, right? If Chicago, if between 4 and 5 o'clock, if staying at the Westin Hotel. You could never program that, right? You could never algorithmically put that in place. But with cognitive computing, Cafe Well Concierge knows your health goals. It can help you, and it can actually help you adjust your health itinerary, your personal health itinerary, on the fly, so that you're always in a position to try to achieve your highest health status at the lowest cost possible.
If it was going to offer me lower premiums, I would definitely be, I'd be there. Lori, Welltok was one of the first partners in the IBM Watson ecosystem and the first venture investment by IBM Watson. Why Welltok? What was it attracted IBM Watson to Welltok?
Yeah, they were actually the first. I think very early on, as we talked about how we would open this up to partners who would build on top of it. I know our general manager at the time, Manoj Saxena, had spent some time with you, and I think he made the comment that off of your platform, it looked like you had 4 separate billion-dollar businesses, or the potential for. So he got very excited about how we could innovate against each of those. But very specifically, I mean, most of you in this room probably know Jeff. I haven't lived in sort of the digital healthcare space, but you know, he's got a terrific reputation for growing businesses and building platforms that cover, you know, many, many patients, consumers' lives across the board. So to go to a leader in healthcare was important for us as we thought about, you know, how do we tackle this spectrum of healthcare needs, whether it's wellness, whether it's treatment, diagnosis, treatment, or frankly, end of life as well. So we very early on went to Jeff for exactly that reason, so we could think about the innovations across healthcare and really build it, you know, correctly from the beginning. It's worked out very well.
And Jeff, from your side, if you're thinking about a partnership, what are the main considerations? What are the things you look for in a potential partner? What would be some potential red flags?
So I've been doing healthcare IT for about 30 years. And so what I look for is the things that aren't going to work. And that stops success right away. And then I look for the speed of getting to a true connection point where you can reach a meeting of the minds with another party with a common vision and a common goal. So what happened with IBM, I have to tell you, when I started meeting with their senior execs, now just imagine, I mean, I know I ran a public company and, you know, it did very well and all that, but just imagine you're in a meeting in a hotel lobby and a senior executive from IBM says to you, hey, Jeff, love your business plan. We're going to actually put an investment in your company. We're going to help create a new solution type that's never been invented before, and we're going to use the power of the IBM platform to help get you into the market. Now, were any of us born yesterday? I mean, it seems almost unbelievable, right? And so what started happening rapidly, Lee, it was just amazing. I remember, I might date myself, but remember when Michael Jackson pulled everyone together for We Are the World, and I don't know if you know the story behind that, but when you walked into that, there was a sign that said, check your ego at the door, right? You had all these, if you will, all these leading luminary performers and so forth, and they all came together for a purpose. Well, we started working with IBM. In 6 weeks, we had prototype. We were working with the top engineers. I'm sharing the stage with Ginny Rometty and Mike Roden and other senior execs at IBM, and frankly, I was stunned. But IBM has been a stellar partner in terms of trying to lower the resistance level of how people are embedded or trying to hold their own territory, be willing to fail fast or succeed fast at what we do. And we have actual product, commercial product going to the market by Q4 of this year. It's stunning, really.
Mind-boggling.
And if I could just add, that was one of the great things our leadership team did. You know, Ginny Rometty as the CEO, this is really, I think this is going to be her legacy in the business. She's just getting started, but she put $1 billion into it. 2,000 people, 500 of which came from our research team, you know, the Almaden Labs.
Not all of that in our company.
Well, but the good news for you is that, you know, right in the beginning, we had the benefit of just all of this brain power, literally cognitive power, sort of pushing into how do we make this right and how do we do this so that we can scale it. And with that, you know, she also put in $100 million of private equity funds, so we could literally seed our partners and their growth as well. So it's just really, it worked out fantastically. I think your team, having you push from the top as well and make sure that this was, you know, a priority on the roadmap, and then also, you know, the development teams, they were in there together doing the work together. I heard in the earlier panel, you know, you really have to do the care and feeding of your developers in the right way, and I think our teams together have done that.
Now, I think one concern for a small company partnering with a larger established company always has to be a difference in culture and priorities. You know, a project that might be make or break for a startup can often be, you know, an interesting but expendable side project for a large company. This project went amazingly fast, and as I understand it, IBM has set off the Watson Group so that they can operate sort of as a business unit on its own. Is that something that's been important here?
Oh, we're definitely seeing that. Although I do have to say, even inside of corporate IBM, I've seen incredible lightness and swiftness of movement. But you're right, the Watson Group has been set off separately. It's its own business unit, which is no small thing, as they would say down in Texas. These engineers and the people who are working with Watson have a lot of autonomy. They can move very quickly, but I think we're driven by a very common vision. So you're right. A small thing can be a side venture, but I know that IBM shares our view in the concept of population health. And while there's lots and lots of work to be done where Watson began in the clinical space and helping us do better with patients and with complicated diagnosis and taking care of those folks, most of us, most of the time, not just in the United States but across the world, we are consumers. We're increasingly being hit with confusion about how do we get healthy and stay healthy. There's all these new devices coming out, apps being invented every day, all sorts of different content sources, fitness and nutrition programs, social communities that you might want to be involved with. And if you have a known diagnosis, like you are going to avoid, there's condition management programs. How do you take this well-intended, cacophonous world of all these things and assemble that for the consumer so that everyone can benefit from innovation? Innovation can be diffused into the marketplace more rapidly. And then I think what differentiates the Welltok approach with Cafe Well is tying that back to the benefit structure of the health plan, because we all start out either Medicare, Medicaid, being part of a commercial health plan in a large group or an individual plan, and the economics of our healthcare flow from there. And I know IBM is very high-minded in a good way about wanting to do good in the world with Watson. So it just flows really well.
That's wonderful. Any lessons for digital entrepreneurs in the audience, things that you learned from this process of working together on Cafe Well Concierge that you'd care to share?
Yeah, I'll start. You know, I think one of the things that Welltok did very well is focusing on the use case and really nailing that in the beginning so that as we applied our resources to it, we weren't wasting time or money or energy around things that didn't matter to the business. So I think that getting that use case right was really important. Second, again, is, you know, this sort of senior leadership and the focus of the senior leadership was so critical. We have worked with some other partners early on who, you know, kind of treated it like it was a side project. And I just think, you know, it's, especially for younger companies, you know, who are trying to really lift their businesses off the ground, if it's not a priority, don't do it, right? Like, get serious about it and put your attention on it and make it work. So those were probably a couple things from our end.
And I would say that, I think this is true. I've been involved in a number of early stage companies, but it's important to have a structural and systematic understanding of the vertical industries you're trying to serve. Because it's easy to sit there and go, oh, healthcare's broken, we're the worst in the world, of the developed countries, all the cliches that we've all heard a million times, right? But we also have to understand what works. We have to understand, how does the dollar flow through the system? What is the interest of the consumer? What are the impacts of the Affordable Care Act? And are they really changing things structurally, or maybe just for a segment of the population? And so what we've been able to do is have a very robust dialogue with the IBM folks and the IBM engineer. They've been able to teach us about the expected capabilities of Watson. We've been able to tell them about what's going on with the transformation in the industry. We keep banging against each other. We keep saying, oh boy, if you can't ingest this sort of information into Watson so that it can cognitively learn, if you can't do it at this volume or this rate, it's going to be non-commercially viable. And their engineers go off and they come back and go, okay, how's this? And we go, close, fix it. And then they say to us, we understand why you might want to do this, but the truth is that right now the roadmap for Watson over the next 18 months is this. So perhaps you can try this approach or work around this until we can get that piece into commercial viability in the market. I just can't think of a more productive piece of advice than to say, think the problem all the way through till it hits the actual intended end user or consumer, and then wheel it all the way back with all the parties that might need to be involved. Test it, check it, get it in front of them as early as possible so you can make adjustments quickly. We call it failing fast, but what we really mean is succeeding as quickly as possible.
Well, I think maybe we can open it up for questions. We've got a couple of minutes left. If anybody would like to address a question to Lori or Jeff? Do we have a mic?
We have one here.
Great presentation. Is IBM on the board, and how do you manage the potential conflict of interest, when you have a corporate strategic on the board?
IBM is not on our board, so that's the answer.
Yep. Yeah, we don't take board seats.
But that's a great question, actually. Very insightful question.
Thank you. Great presentation, Susan Hull. 2 questions. Tell us about the promise of IBM Watson for more precision, personalized medicine, the ability to both personalize and mass customize care for the individual and many. And then there's a number of us in the crowd who are part of the Blue Button effort and thinking about what can Watson do for Blue Button.
So maybe I'll take the personalization. I mean, really, there's 3 waves occurring in healthcare in general, and I'm actually also affiliated with the Oliver Wyman Health Innovation Center. But the wave 1 that we're kind of really in the early or middle stages of is patient-centered care, where we're actually starting to rotate care systems around the person instead of around the clinician. And we got a long ways to go to get there, to be honest. Wave 2 is the wave of consumerism, where we're going to put the consumer in a position to make choices. Those choices can range everything from once-a-year choices as to what benefit plan they're a part of to daily habits, right, that affect them. And we've actually have a taxonomy of that we're teaching IBM Watson how to deal with. The third wave, is the wave of the science and prevention. It's the omics, right? Genomics, proteomics, microbiomics, and so on and so forth, which we're just on the very early stages. That third stage and that second stage, produce massive amounts of unstructured data that coding could never and will never be able to keep up with. And I have no doubts that IBM Watson's ability to learn to ingest those corpuses of data to be able to, in a more and more real-time fashion, be able to treat you as a body of knowledge, both literally and digitally, is something that's going to advance the status of our health for all of us for a long time to come.
Yeah, and I'll just add quickly, I know we're out of time, but we're going to continue to try these mini experiments, whether it's sort of specific to healthcare or just across the way we interact with digital devices or social data in general. So you'll start to see more and more of this. We'll let people play with it in domains that we haven't used or haven't really tackled prior, and I think it'll start to creep back into our lives across healthcare as well.
Well, that's about all we have time for, I'm afraid. Cafe Well Concierge, it's going to be a really, really big deal. Jeff Margolis and Lori Zapp.